This week saw the appointment of more state legislators to fill vacant House and Senate seats. Jeff Bridges was named to fill the state Senate seat vacated by Daniel Kagan, and another, Meg Freilich, will fill Bridges' former House seat. A Republican committee will fill a House seat since Representative Bob Rankin will be tapped to fill Randy Baumgartner's Senate seat. A Colorado Sun report this week showed that 1 in 4 state legislators were serving thanks to a vacancy appointment at some point in their legislative career. David, this is a lot of different lawmakers that at the very least at some point get into the process by being selected or elected by a very small group of people. This is, at least they can fit in this room. So we're not talking about a major group of people. Is that a structural problem or simply how our system works?
It might be a necessity, because if somebody resigns in, say, March to go take a federal appointment, there's really not enough time to get a primary and all those kinds of things for a more democratic selection. But it is a concern, and part of it's caused by the fact that people do now leave the legislature more often just for something better, as they see it, than I think in the past. Senator Baumgartner's resignation was, I think, appropriate. He'd been stripped of all his committee assignments, so his district was not getting the full representation in the legislature that it needs. Bob Rankin was a good choice. He was in his 4th term in the House. He's the most experienced Republican member on the Joint Budget Committee. Then now his seat opens up. His wife, who's on the State Board of Education, wants to apply to the vacancy committee for his House seat. I think she might face perhaps competition from Greg Rippey, a former state representative from Glenwood Springs who came in second in the open Senate seat. And there's also another competitor who didn't win but looked strong, was Deborah Irvine. She's a Breckenridge resident who speaks 4 languages and has run for State House twice and is very familiar with how over-regulation harms small business.
Eric, you brought up this issue last year of how many folks are part of the legislature because of this vacancy process. I guess, does it come to when we see it in bold print like this, 1 in 4 of the current legislative group, does it become a problem to address, or is it, I guess my same question to David, is it just simply part of our democracy?
Well, it's been part of our system around Colorado for a very long time, but it seems to be accelerating for reasons David expressed. I think I disagree with David's conclusion, but his analysis is right. People are moving on. And as term limits get near to a legislator, they start looking around. Okay, maybe I can grab a Senate seat. Somebody left to be elected a county commissioner when they were elected a county commissioner in Larimer County, et cetera. So everyone's sort of looking for their next move. I don't think it is terribly healthy. It is not small d democratic. When there's a vacancy in Congress, a Colorado vacancy in Congress, doesn't happen that often, but there's a special election. If there's a vacancy in the U.S. Senate, we give the governor the right to fill that seat pending the next election. But a vacancy in Congress is filled by a special election. Congressional districts are, round math, 8 times as large as a typical state house district in Colorado. If you can have a special election in a congressional seat, I'm not sure why you can't in a state house or state senate seat. Just a microcosm. Those 3 names you mentioned, Daniel Kagan, Jeff Bridges, Meg Freilich. I mean, Dan Kagan became a state representative first through the vacancy process, then moved on to the state senate. Jeff Bridges now became, and Jeff's a good guy, but he became a state senator through the vacancy process, Meg Freilich. And it almost becomes a house of cards, pun not intended vis-a-vis the TV show, but it becomes a house of cards where it builds on itself. One resignation triggers several cards falling. I don't think it's terribly healthy. I'm applauding the Colorado Sun for initiating this discussion.
Natasha, if anything, it bolsters the reputation for what we've called at this table the arcane process of caucuses. Because, why go to someone's house or, I guess, at this point, a gymnasium at the local school to be part of the, who stands in what corner for what candidate, or who's going to vote for their local and candidates. But those are these small groups of folks who are the committees who are naming these people. So they're there's more power in these caucuses and these little smaller committees, these gymnasiums, than we may have thought. What do you think?
Well, especially when you consider our number of independents in the state. So those caucus members, I mean, these are the party faithful, the people who go to every meeting, who are so involved. I mean, it's wonderful that they're that engaged, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily represent the independent voter who might have voted in a reappointment or a new appointment election. I think that's what's interesting about both, Eric bringing it up at this table and the Colorado Sun coverage is the more people know about this, I think the better. The more the voters know, okay, if I want to get involved in this sort of appointment, then I need to get involved in the party in a different way that I have been in the past. And then, of course, we need to look at the advantage that this gives. I mean, once you've been appointed for the upcoming election, that's an incredible advantage. And so what does that mean within communities, especially as we, always talk about campaign finance, as we always talk about how these campaigns are run? That's something I'd like to keep my eye on as well.
Patty, is this the new, I guess, running for legislature in Colorado for dummies? You don't have to really run, just wait for someone to resign and influence 2 or 3 dozen people.
Wait for someone to do something really, really stupid like Kagan or Baumgartner. If they had left when first the inability to use the right bathroom, the inability to keep his hands off someone's rear end, if they had resigned when that came up, we would have actually been able to have elections for those seats. So that's one of the issues. Giving credit where credit's due, I think Lynn Bartles was the one who first noticed just what percentage, and it was right after the election, what percentage of the legislators had started by appointment. I hope when they test people out, they make sure they know which bathroom to use.